Okay. All right. With that said, for those who don't know, my name is James Pope. Everybody just calls me Pope. Hopefully most of you guys know me here. If not, I'm not doing a great job. DC435, I love it. It's a thing. I'm one of the core members on it. I help sit on SaintCon, which as of right now, we're planning like it is a full go. It looks like it'll be that way. We have two keynotes locked in. Of course, everybody's saying if the state of Utah changes back to a level that doesn't allow for gatherings, and we obviously have to do whatever that is. Black Hat, which got canceled this year for 2 of them, so that's been a little sad. I work at RSA. I helped run DC801 for a lot of years when I was in Salt Lake. I still consider myself a member there, so we're not really West Side Story fighting each other. We're friends there. And I helped run B-Side Salt Lake, which this year we did a virtual con for it, which isn't as cool, but I'm glad we were able to pull something off there. And that's it. You can find me on Twitter there. So with that, Showdown is what we're going to talk about today. And high level of what Showdown is, it is public-facing things. So anything that you make routable to the public internet is available on Showdown. And there's a lot of caveats and asterisks to that, and we'll try to touch on each of those points as we go. So to explain it, we're going to briefly touch on web scraping. Web scraping simply is some sort of crawler, scraper, or combination of that lets you go through websites either from lists they're giving you through index lists or site lists to you creating your own, following links as they go. So there's crawlers and scrapers out there, and we're not going to spend a lot of time on that other than to touch on this point that there was a while where it was a big gray area. Like, is Shodan legal? Is scraping a website or crawling a website legal? And it was this company, I don't remember the name, it's somewhere on here, HIQ. Yeah, they're there on the right side. HIQ got sued by LinkedIn, which is owned by Microsoft, because they were essentially like, cool, you built all these connections of who knows who and what jobs they work for and all these things, and they just started scraping all of that and dishing it up as a business service. And it went up to appeals, and this was the last ruling. It came out last September, and there was a lot of like official write-ups on it that came out in like January. And the summary is this, and it's long and boring, so I'm not going to read it, but essentially they're saying like, web crawlers are legal. You can, if you make it public facing, you have the ability to crawl and scrape that site. There are caveats there about businesses. There are caveats about IP. So some of that is this YouTube one, like, hey, if you were to take content off a website and host it on your own website, that is illegal. You've stolen their IP, right? But as far as pulling it off and not monetizing it and not claiming it's your own, they said it was essentially legal. There are still some forms that are illegal there. If it's behind a login, it's typically not legal. And there's some other caveats. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not going to say that I have the definitive answers here. Research it yourself. Whatever you do, if you're going to ever run a business or do this on your own, you should definitely get a lawyer involved. There are still gray areas there. But this was a landmark case in the InfoSec world and in a lot of other businesses because it opened up like, hey, Shodan's not a gray zone anymore. It's essentially a perfectly good zone. The taglines of Shodan used to always be like the scariest search engine on the internet and all these other stuff, right? It's just a tool to me, right? Any questions on any of that before I move forward? I'm not a lawyer though, but questions on scraping, crawling? Oh yeah, it's being recorded. Nobody's gonna ask questions. Cool. All right, so what is Shodan? So these are some solutions they have. These are, in this scenario, these are RDP sessions or camera sessions or anything else that is public facing to the internet that does not require any authentication to get to. Meaning this banner, whatever, I didn't give you like Telnet banners and all those SSH banners, but they exist too. Those banners, these images, these cameras are essentially just sitting out on the internet for anybody in the world to access. So Shodan just has a crawler and scraper and it just goes through, crawls and scrapes, posts it. If it's behind a login, even if that login is admin, they don't grab that, right? But there are sometimes, we'll get into some of that gray stuff here in a minute. They also have map features, which is interesting. This is pulled a few hours ago. So these are the number of devices sitting in Utah that are public facing on Shodan. So is that 500,000? Which is a lot. But I mean, some of those are totally fine and legitimate. You run a website, it's going to be public facing. That's its intent. But there are a lot of those that are not the intent. This was the blog post put out. I'm not going to spend a ton of time here, but they have options in Shodan to show you databases and databases with vulnerabilities to those databases. But the high level of this, I haven't personally ever ran across a petabyte that I've had to do myself. I do have a lab that I maintain in a different state that does have over a petabyte, but these are just public facing over a petabyte of just data that you can find on Shodan. So this question comes up a lot, especially when I was an analyst, is, hey, we should block Shodan. And based on what I just showed you, hey, are these screenshots and these things, you might be like, well, we should probably block Shodan. That doesn't sound good. I'm under the opinion that that makes no sense because it's still there. There's still a lot of tools and other systems out there that allow you to do that. Some of these on the right out there, I think we did an Nmap 101 class for DC435 that allows you to do a lot of what Nmap does. You can do it manually. I'm more of the opinion that you should secure your things and protect your things and not make them public available if they don't need to be versus blocking them. But there are orgs that do that. There's orgs that you'll put in the Shodan and they'll have 0 hits for, and then you scan them with Nmap and you have a lot of hits for. So take that for whatever it is. If you find in your org it makes sense to block Shodan, I'm not going to fault you for it. It's just different than my opinion. It's things as simple as there's entire websites devoted just to checking IPs and vulnerabilities on sites too. So I mean, I guess if your policy is to block, how are you blocking? Are you waffing that? Are you going around the ways people get around those? There's a lot more things to consider. We're not going to discuss any of the rest of those today. We're just going to spend time on Shodan. Just know there's a lot of other tools and ways to do that. Shodan also has these, this is new to Shodan, probably in the last 4 months, 3 months. It's called Shodan monitoring, and it allows you to put in IP addresses or I think FQDNs, and you can tell it what you want to monitor for. So anytime there's a change to that IP address for one of these things, it decides the SSL cert, it decides that it's vulnerable, there's SSL cert expired, IoT, anything that's popped up on there, it will get an email alert that looks a lot like this. So this is one that I set up, and I got an email on it just to like show you. I've obfuscated things, but this is a Minecraft server, if you can tell by the banner that says Minecraft. And of course things are obfuscated in there, so you shouldn't be able to pin that down, but that is the common port. But what this would do is you could put in your IP addresses for your org or yourself, and if you accidentally ever made anything publicly available, you'd get an alert for it. This essentially has automated what I used to call the SOAR project, which I'll discuss here in just a second. Some other cool tools of Shodan, they built in vulnerability enumeration, and this is where you maybe get into the gray zone. So there are ways to run vulnerability scans that are, I don't know if anybody's run like Qualys boxes or Nessus boxes or OpenVAS, and they call them safe scan enumerations versus, depending on the company, they have different names. Some call them risky scanning, some call it deep, some call it, there's different names for it. Shodan just does light touches based on the infrastructure of what there is. So it's like, hey, this thing is running an Apache server and it's coming back with this version, so therefore it is likely vulnerable to this CVE. It becomes super useful. I don't know if anybody does any bug bounty or anything else like that, or your own org, where if you hit your own server and it's coming back with a bunch of vulnerabilities, you want to validate that they're probably not vulnerable or take that server offline or. So that's here on the left. On the right is they now have a Showdown Exploits. I don't know if anybody ever use DB exploits to see what the latest exploits are. Showdown now has a built-in list that you can type in. I just typed in Citrix, and it pops up all the Citrix vulnerabilities and you can bump through it. They also, next to where vulnerabilities are is this web technologies. I don't know if anybody's ever used the tool Built With. Built With is pretty cool. Go to any website and hit Built With. So just type Built With into DuckDuckGo or whatever and click on any website, and it will tell you what stack they're using, what they're leaking out based on the stack. That can be useful as well. And I'll show you this one here. Showdown 2000 is kind of cool. There used to be this term called Showdown Safari, and it was on Twitter where people would just go find things on Showdown and post them. But some of those crossed the line, at least in my opinion. People have different various opinions on what is legal or not in that scenario, where they're like logging into HVAC systems and people's camera systems. And so Showdown Safari isn't as much of a thing anymore, but there's variants of it like Showdown 2000, which we'll touch on here in a second. One thing to note about Showdown, it's slow. It's the best way to put it. It's slow, and a lot of times it'll just freaking air out on you. So just understand that, like, you end up with this Cloudflare error quite a bit. Likely while I'm showing today, we're going to hit a spot where it's just going to take a dirt nap, and just understand that's is what it is. It is super cheap. I think I have something on it. Let's see. I didn't put it in there. I had a Twitter post. There it is. Yeah, I did put it in there. So this is what I'd recommend if you want to play with it. It is a paid service. You can hit showdown.io right now. You can search things, but at some point you only get like 10 results. I don't remember what the restraint is because I haven't used it in a while. But if you want to look at more or see more things, it wants money because they're spending server costs. And if you saw that list of IPs, they are definitely spending for servers, right? They're crawling the entire internet often, and they are providing results. So, I mean, that does cost money. So I get it, but it is stupid cheap. You can just enroll in it and use a .edu address, and you get a free license. That's how mine is registered. Unethical life pro tip would be just sign up for college and cancel, and most time you'll keep an edu account. I have a few of those, Slick and other stuff that, whatever. But they allow you to get a lot of things in the world. And if it's for your org, like if I was actually monitoring for my work, we would just pay for it because it's actually pretty reasonably priced. But that's just opinion. I would recommend on this call, if you haven't used it or want to bump through it, get an edu account. If you're really risk adverse to that and don't want to do it, let me know. I'll probably share a credit with you or something. And
also, Pope, their Black Friday deals, like every year, it's like $5 for a lifetime membership.
Yeah, $1, $5, correct.
Like crazy cheap.
In fact, this response was to somebody who was trying to pay for that, and they got an error because they used an edu account, and you can't pay when you have an edu account. You already get it free. And the EDUs come with API, they come with CLI, they come with a whole bunch of other stuff in them. So with that said, let's bump to the, this is the some of the examples of it. Here, let's just show it again real quick. So there's some syntax to it. It has gotten much easier than it used to be. It used to be like a pain to figure out the syntax. I used to have like, it was like, I had like this Splunk, I had a doc sheet that had like my Splunk queries and my Showdown queries. But it's gotten much easier, and they even give you examples now and let you just run them directly. So with all that said, we will bump over to Showdown, and I'm going to stop recording. So thank you for coming to my TED Talk, and we're going to stop the recording, and then we'll just hit actual IP addresses, like see them and not have them recorded.